Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Confused. This week, you've got your hosts, Julian and Mona, talking about a really important topic. And that topic is how professional services and brands should think about their marketing messages at different stages of their business. Now, as we know, brands come to existence, they provide a service, there is a transactional approach to things, and then they are in existence for years and they go on with their business, and then they're either bought over or they sell the business, and they go through this evolutionary process where they come into the existence. But what happens at the initial start of professional services is when a brand is launched, most of the organizations or firms actually have an idea of what this looks like, what's the logo, what's the brand colors, and the basic existence admin side of things that are from a brand related are done. But then what we actually see is marketing's not really paid attention to from an ongoing perspective. So that connection to business strategy is the missing piece in the equation. So when you look at it, you see, yes, there's a brand, they exist, they have a basic website, a basic logo, and there's a team of people who provide services, and that's it.
I actually, Mona, if I can just say, I don't think there is actual consideration of brand. What they're looking at is it's all the classic stuff of, okay, I've got a logo, I've got a website, tick, 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 I've got the paper, I've got my business cards, right. Job done. Sit back, wait for the work to come in.
That's where it stops. So I find that so interesting that it just stops there.
And what they're not thinking about at that point, and sometimes never do, is, right, what do we stand for? Where are we going? What is our eventual aim? What is the strategy? And very often the strategy is no longer than looking 12 months down the line and hoping you get some clients so you get enough income to survive. Well, that's okay at the very beginning, and perhaps is all one can think of. But as time goes by, it's got to be deeper thought. You've got to actually look at this and say, okay, what are we? What is this organization? Because at the end of the day, Boggins Incorporated is what you are creating. You are creating something that has a value. You're creating something that is in itself intrinsically the thing that ultimately one assumes you will be wanting to get value out of. So you really have to start thinking about the strategy of the brand and the fact that you are building value to that brand, so that when somebody comes along, whether it's the stock market, whether it's a purchaser, whether it's a bigger firm, whatever it is, that you have to think of, what are they buying? Are they buying you? No. Are they buying goodwill? Somewhat. But really what they're buying is that goodwill is attached to that brand, that entity, perhaps more even than the people that are in it, because let's face it, if it's a company is very often like a broom. Well, you can replace the head and the handle umpteen times, but it's still the same broom. All the staff can come and go. It's still the same company. Boggins Inc. will still hopefully be there in 10 years' time, even though the original partners, the original staff may have moved on. Who knows? But that is what you're creating these days. It's not the old partnership model. It's now some sort of entity that you're creating.
And sometimes I wonder why people are not able to think about the think about the is it because they're bogged down into the day-to-day and the running of the business that they're not able to take a step back and look at the whole picture and say, okay, this is the direction that we're heading, and even though there is somewhere, and they're not those documents are not lived upon, they're kind of just set, and everybody forgets about it because then they go back to the routine. So I wonder sometimes, has it got to do with the idea of that we need to keep going, we need to keep working, and suddenly you forget which direction are we working in, why we are working in that direction, and why do we need to keep going?
But as we've said in a previous podcast, the issue is, Mona, well, nobody's trained to think of it that way. Very often they're running a business with no business experience, so they're not thinking of the value of the brand. It's not. There's the two aspects. One is head down, bum up. We're just working away at this, which is understandable. But the other aspect is where they don't. It's not thought of because the value is not understood. And this comes back to this whole point of, a lot of this is chicken and egg, because if a business does not explain to its clients, which professional services firms don't, what they do, they are not adding their value to a business. They don't explain properly what they do. They don't explain their added value. So from even that point of view, they're not thinking strategically about the brand. They're not thinking strategically about their marketing because they haven't had to, and all they're relying upon is the fact of, oh, I've got another job. It's just not understanding the bigger picture, perhaps.
And it sometimes feels as though it's an extra layer of work because you're constantly being in two places at the same time. You're looking at the present business and making sure that that's running perfectly, and at the same time you're also constantly thinking and connecting it to the future and trying to be in the future there and kind of make those decisions now so that you can actually have a path to travel in the future, rather than just kind of being on this constant wheel of current projects or current business, and then that's it, and it just keeps on going.
Indeed, and at the end of the day, your marketing is strategic. What you've done at the beginning is one aspect. You then have the middle part of marketing where you're just trucking along and you're talking and communicating to your clients about your offer and what you're doing so that you can get more work. And then you have the final part, which should be done at the same time as everything else. These aren't mutually exclusive, but where actually you're by saying this is who we are, this is what we do, you then add value to that brand, and that value is what you gain at the end. You look at the years BMW spent selling the fact that they are in engineering excellence so long that they no longer need to say it because that is intrinsically understood.
Yeah, it's a given.
It's a given.
Yeah.
So how do they market that now? People tell one another, oh, it's a BMW. Well, why BMW special? Oh, it's their engineering. But is it? I don't know. I'm sure that they are. But the point is that they have spent so long adding value to their brand that the value is intrinsic. That is what is important within the service industry, is because your service offering, your standard of service, your understanding of your clients, your added value is where you add value to your own business. And if you don't tell your clients, and if you don't tell the world out there the good work that you're doing, nobody's going to know, and they're going to assume.
And in terms of the messages also, I've looked at a recent article that I read this week was stick to your like the 80-20 rule. 80% of a message's main what the brand message main component is your purpose, because you really need to stick to your purpose no matter whatever stage of the business you are at. And 20% is that variable where you kind of adjust with your message according to who you're targeting, if it's a new sector or if it's a new service that you're launching or what kind of product that you're releasing in the market. But I kind of thought that was a good mantra for someone to stick in their head and kind of go, okay, what's my purpose? Why do I exist as a professional firm? Well, what am I solving? And that kind of becomes the foundation.
And that really is no more than what you do as a professional anyway. And all you're adding at the end is, do I make a note of this and who do I tell about it? Because at the end of the day, if you're a professional in any profession, you have to sit there at the beginning and say, what am I doing? What role am I fulfilling? What am I offering?
But I feel that kind of just that becomes stagnant at that stage. Like, yes, you give it a good thought at the start of everything, or at the start of a service, or a start of or when you're taking another direction or another goal. But then it just stops there because you do it at the start, but you kind of don't embed it in the journey.
Absolutely, yeah, and you don't do it at the end. And one of the key things, the number of alleged, monthly meetings I've sat through, and you get to the end of the monthly meeting, everyone tells one another what one's done, and then you get to the end of that, and then that's it. Nobody actually thinks, well, what did we learn? What do we add? Who do we tell? How do we put this out there? It's again, it should be intrinsic within the business, is actually thinking about who are you telling, how are you communicating it? I mean, I was having a chat with one of our new neighbours who has just spent $10 million buying two houses next to one another. He's a property owner in China. And I said to him, I was talking to him about property and marketing professional services, and he said, why do they need that? And I said, well, do you know what a quantity surveyor does? And he looked at me and went, no. Now, this is a man who is worth many millions of dollars, who works in China in property, who hasn't come across quantity surveyors. Now, one could say he's ignorant, but he's made enough money out of his ignorance. And again, why hasn't the profession? He's an Australian. He's been living in Australia since 1980. Why has the professions failed to communicate to somebody in property about what it does? That's that's a failure of the industry.
That's such $1 million question to kind of think and sit back and say that who's out there who needs our services and how do we reach them? Yeah. And that's the question that every firm needs an answer to. And kind of the onus here and the responsibility here is on those professional firms and brands to reach these customers and not vice versa. It's more important to make sure that what these brands are saying and why they exist. And even in those, going back to that point about the monthly meetings and the discussions, those meetings are becoming so very tick box and tactical. Yeah. It's like, yes, we've done this. Now we're working on X, Y, and Z, which is great. But then how does this relate back to why we started? How does this relate back to where we are heading? And those questions seem to be so much in a distant future that you don't even know when that future arrives. You're sitting there as a business and thinking, what just happened? Why are we not able to get the goals that we started off with? And then there is this whole understanding of, the world's changing, we need to adapt.
Precisely.
So on that note, this is another episode of Confused. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Listen again next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.